And
I'm a youth services librarian here at the Santa Fe Public Library. I work primarily at the main library here downtown, about a block away from the plaza. And I'm so glad to have everybody here. I hope that you've got a few questions. What we're going to do is start the program out, and I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to give you some time to ask some questions as well. And but before we get started, I wanted to point out that Dr. Michelle Reish is here. She's one of the youth services librarians from the Lafarge Branch Library, and I'm really glad she's here. We count on her to keep us straightened out so many times. I also want to thank the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, and for the Friends of the Library. They are ones who are helping support this program. It's called the Big Read, and it's a series of programs based upon books and experiences and art and music. And one of the I think the one of the main books that we're going to be talking about today is The Only Road. And it's I've never actually heard anybody say this name. I've read it many times. She is a librarian from Puerto Rico, and she went to New York, and they started an award in her honor. It's called the Pura Belpré. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
yeah,
I've
that
never
sounds great.
actually heard anybody say it. And anyway, this book that we're talking about today is an award-winning book, and lots of people have been talking about it. Be sure and if you haven't checked out the book, check it out. But look for the I call them peripheral books. There's like a sequel, and then there's like a what would you call it? Like
A companion. A
yeah, a
companion. So
companion book.
it's
How that?
more or less in the same universe,
Uh-huh.
but completely different story. So the Crossroads here, that is the sequel to The Only Road. And the companion book is Santiago's Road Home. And these are all available at the Santa Fe Public Library. Y también están disponibles en español si cualquiera persona lo quiere leer en español, están bien.
Yeah, I think, let's see, I think that was for introduction purposes. That's all I was going to say. Did you want to add anything?
I just want to say thank you guys for having me here. And some of you may know this, some of you may not. I'm actually a Santa Fe author. So I am often seen going to curbside pickup at Lafarge Library, since that's the one that's closest to me at the moment. So yeah, thank you to Santa Fe Public Library for having me here. And it's always great to talk to people, whether you're from Santa Fe or other parts of the world. Hopefully we have a good mix here.
Well, let's see. Let's start. Are we ready now? Let's get
I'm
the
ready.
program
Are you
rolling.
ready?
Okay. Let's see. First off the bat, I saw on the website, on your website, which by the way, she has a website, be sure to look it up, and also go on YouTube. She's done lots of interviews on YouTube. So anyway, check that out. And she's got all kinds of fans that are talking about her book on YouTube, or you can go to any internet browser, I guess you could say, and type in the phrase author Alexandra Diaz and book talks, and do it as a video search. You'll find all kinds of fun stuff. But anyway, I see that you're an acrobat. how,
Yes.
How does that tie in with writing books?
It doesn't at the moment. Hopefully in the future that will change. But yes, one of my day jobs used to be, only because we haven't been able to do so much, but still kind of is working for Wiseville, New Mexico, which for those of you who are local, We are a social justice circus here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we actually used to do a lot of presentations, and we had a program called Circus Comes to School, where we would teach kids how to walk on stilts and how to do acrobatics and clowning. El Camino Real has some aerial fabrics, and we've taught there as well. So yes, one of the times that my writing life and my circus life have come together was when last year I got an invitation from Carlos Gilbert to come talk to the kids in their school. And I get to their classroom and I'm like, I know you, and I know you, and I know you. And that was one of the schools that we would come to as the Circus Comes to School program. So I actually had a pop quiz for the kids when I arrived, and I'm like, how many of you guys think I'm familiar? And they're like, and it's like, yeah, I taught you guys how to walk on stilts. And today I'm talking to you about my book. So it's kind of fun to have two jobs that I absolutely adore.
It's a wonderful combination, in my opinion, because we're sort of still in our own little hovels right now, having to do our work and then turn around and do some exercising with circuses. I think it's a lovely statement. Okay, the next question. This is a hard one, and I debated on whether I should ask this, but is Miguel a real person?
Right. Okay. So all of my characters are based on real events. So the characters themselves are all fictional, but the things that they go through are things that other people have gone through and have experienced. And that's something that's kind of fun when you're a writer, is that you can take personality traits from one person and from another person. And if you heard somebody say something, then you can add that up and make them into a fully three dimensional character. So yes, Miguel is definitely fictional, but his experience, his life, the things that happened to him, and I'm not going to reveal too much if you haven't read the book, but something tragic does happen to Miguel in the first chapter. And unfortunately, that is something that has happened to so many children. And it's a representation of what is happening in the world today, not just in the past, but in the present right now. So I think that's really important to point out.
Let's see. I really appreciated how you incorporated Spanish into the English text, and my Spanish is not that great. So it was really nice the way you put it together. You made it understandable within the context of it. I was just wondering, do you have a formula that you follow when you're to, tie all that together and make it work?
I don't really have a formula. There's certain words that just sound a lot better in Spanish, or they don't have a satisfactory um, translation into the English. So sometimes as I was writing, I could hear the characters saying these words in Spanish. So it just kind of came in automatically. I also wanted to give the flavor that the kids are from Guatemala, and they're going to use a Spanish that may or may be different from the Spanish that other people have used. For example, I was born in Puerto Rico, my parents are Cuban, and yes, there's a lot of words that we use that other people don't use. So a good example of a word that I picked up is patojos. And this was taught to me by a Guatemalan friend of mine. And patojos, it's like, oye, patojos. It's like, hey, dudes, what's up? So it's just, kind of like a nice greeting that you can say to your friends. It's informal, but it's very, very distinctly Guatemalan. And I thought, yes, this is the kind of word I'm looking for, because I just feel it adds so much extra flavor to be able to include this language. And then I also, of course, wanted to make sure that the kids could understand what was going on. And so I don't always explain the words immediately, but I'm hoping that they could be understood through the context. And in the event that there is a Spanish word that you guys don't understand, and this is, something that the teachers and the librarians absolutely love, there is a glossary in the back. So if you really want to cheat, you can find that, but you can also just keep going and try to incorporate some of these Spanish words into your regular life and add more flavor to it. It's fantastic. I love it. It's so much fun.
Speaking of languages, uh, in your book, you talked a lot about as our two heroes are traveling across Mexico, they talk about the different dialects that they hear and accents, and they were able to identify where different people came from based upon their accent. I was just wondering, and I think that's also true in the United States. I'd just like for you to talk a little bit about that. And I mean, you've had a bit of a chance to travel, and just share some of your thoughts in that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, accents are very interesting. They're a reflection of the culture. Sometimes they can be a reflection of the people who um, have settled in that geographic area. Um, and again, that kind of goes back to the fact of my including the Spanish in there. So a Puerto Rican accent, for example, is similar to a Dominican accent or a Cuban accent, but they're still very different. So even though they're geographically very close, because they're all in the Caribbean, they are very different. And um, I I love hearing people talk, and I love hearing how people express themselves. And I think it's very important also not to lump everyone together. So even though you have a common language, that doesn't mean that you're the same. You
Mhm.
there's still a lot of diversity. There's still a lot of cultural differences. I mean, we see that definitely in the United States. So somebody who was born and raised in the South, they have different mannerisms, they have different cultures than someone who was born and raised in the Southwest. So, all of that, I think that's something that just enriches us as people and makes us, really human, that we're not all the same. And that was something that I really wanted to emphasize because people have this misconception that if you speak Spanish, you're the same. So not true. So not true. Just like if you speak English, you're definitely not the same. I mean, you can't say that somebody from Santa Fe, New Mexico has had the same life experience as somebody from New York City. I mean, they're so completely geographically, culturally different environments that they're not the same, even if they do share a same language.
Thank you. Um, here's one for you. Padre Kevin and El Gordo, they are like, I don't want to give too much away, but there's definitely some compare and contrast going on there. Tell us about that a little bit, if you would.
Right. So, for those of you who haven't read the book, Padre Kevin and El Gordo are two characters that Jaime and Angela encounter as they're coming through Mexico, and they're two characters that have shared scenes. Padre Kevin is a priest, but he's probably the most laid back, uncliche priest you can imagine. I mean, he goes around wearing sandals and t-shirts with funny slogans, and he drinks, he smokes, he swears. So he's definitely not the kind of priest that a lot of people may have encountered. And I had a lot of fun creating him um, as uncliche as I could possibly make him. And then we have El Gordo, who is a gangster. He's a mobster. And with him, I went the absolute opposite way. So I wanted to make him as stereotypically gangster as possible. He reminds me a little bit of Vernon Dursley for those of you who are Harry Potter fans. Um, so I was definitely thinking about that as I was writing him, and just making him the most despicable person I could possibly imagine. And, I mentioned that, he's got this big mustache that looks like something died on his upper lip. And I mean, Walter, you have a beautiful mustache. So I'm not insulting people with mustaches, but yeah, it was just lots of fun to create a character that I knew was going to be bad, and I wanted him to be as horrendously bad as I could possibly make him.
He was scary for me, that's for sure.
Okay, well, hopefully it didn't keep you up at night.
I was gripping the pages, that's for sure. Let me ask you this. Speaking of character, who was your favorite character?
Okay, so my favorite character is Vida. Vida is a dog. And she came about in a really interesting way because I was taking care of this dog called Jasmine. And I'm typing away at the story, and Jasmine jumps up onto my lap. And I'm like, Jasmine, mamita, what do you want? You've been fed, you've been walked. What else is there in life? She's like, wag, wag, wag. And I'm like, Jasmine, do you want to be in the story? Wag, 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 wag. So I started off putting her in the story. And she's also a reflection of another dog I know who was rescued from a dog fight arena and is consequently also missing an ear. And she just quickly became my favorite character. I was concerned that it would be a little too much of a political statement to introduce dog fights, including with my immigration. But it's like, no, it worked. And some people were even saying, well, a dog, how can you include a dog in the story? They already have hard enough life. But the fact is, a dog can survive so much more than a human can. A dog will eat things that we will think are absolutely despicable. Uh, any of you who have dogs, I'm sure you're well aware, roadkill, insects, feces, none of that is off limits for a hungry dog. So yes, her chances of survival were actually a lot higher than the kids. And I love that dog. I wish I had that dog because, she was inspired by two dogs, but she did definitely become her own individual character. And I love her for that.
How about oh, those two kids, they took a journey. They went all the way from Guatemala to New Mexico and crossed Mexico. It was kind of like a how did I put this? It was like a pilgrimage. Did you do a pilgrimage like that? Did you to draw upon for your own writing, or
So
how did that work?
I did not do the journey that my students did. My students, my characters did. I did go through parts of Mexico to kind of get a feel for the area, but no, I didn't actually do the pilgrimage that they did. I resulted a lot on Google Earth to kind of give me an idea of what kind of landscape they were going to go through, what to kind of expect in the new cities that the train, for example, was passing through. And I did a lot of also extensive research, reading memoirs, biographies, newspaper articles. If anyone is, really interested in this type of book, I highly recommend Enrique's Journey. They have both a adult version and a youth version. So please feel free to read the version that you feel more comfortable reading. But that really did help me get a feel for what it was like to go on this journey. And I sent an email with a map that I created to show where my characters were going through. If we could share that screen for a second. I don't know if it was received. Yeah, awesome. There it is. Okay, so you can see that it starts in Guatemala. I gave Jaime a kind of vague home in Guatemala. He's not from any particular city because I wanted it to be a little more generic. And then you can see that they went through Tapachula and then continued onward. They went to La Lecheria. And having this map just kind of give me an idea of what they were going through also helped me in the sense, because then I could think, okay, so La Lecheria, what does that look like? And I mean, in Spanish, you think milk land. Well, it's actually kind of, not really farmy anymore. It's quite built up, and there was a lot of debris on the railroad tracks from what I was able to see of that. So I was able to add that because I knew where they were going through. Yes, thank you for sharing that screen.
I have to say, I will never look at La Lecheria without thinking of a shoe. That's all I'm going to say.
A shoe.
A shoe on the side of the railroad tracks.
Yep.
That wasn't empty.
Yep. Unfortunately, that is very realistic. Sad to say.
On a lighter note, pinto beans or black beans.
I am Cuban, so I have got to say my black beans, and yes, definitely. Nothing against pinto beans. I will gladly have pinto beans. Pero if I have the option, it's black beans all the way. And yes, I do have a very good Cuban black bean recipe. No offense to Trader Joe's, but their Cuban black beans are not Cuban black beans. Just saying that.
I wonder where they came from. I've spent some time in Florida, so I have to say, when I was there, I discovered black beans and yellow rice. Ooh, very tasty.
Yeah, I have to say, I love, all beans of any kind. I don't discriminate. And, I'm Puerto Rican too. So give me a good pink bean. And you're thinking, there are pink beans? Oh, yes, there are pink beans. And, oh, they're so good.
One of the things you talk about in your book is tamales wrapped in banana leaves instead of corn husks. And going to Florida, that was an eye-opening experience. Banana leaves instead of corn husks.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that as New Mexicans, we're used to the tamales wrapped in the corn husks. But corn husks are really only used, as far as I know, are in northern Mexico. But in southern Mexico and in Central America, they use the banana leaves. And the corn husks are actually a luxury item. I mean, I know that sounds pretty weird because they're very, very inexpensive. But because they're not growing corn in southern Mexico and in parts of Central America, then yes, you have to import those corn husks. So they use the banana leaves to wrap the tamales in, and that's something that's actually comes from the Caribbean as well. So we don't call them tamales, we call them pasteles, for example. And they're not made with corn, like a corn masa, but they're made usually with plantain or yuca, other kinds of root vegetables that are more native to the Caribbean, and yeah, always wrapped in banana leaves.
Thank you. Angela and Jaime. I have to say, one of my sister's names is Angela, and you have Angela in the second book, and you described it as when she got to the United States, people pronounced it like they were spitting it out, and I'm like, ooh. I better not tell my sister that. But Angela and Jaime, where are they? Let's see, what was that? How did you go about defining their personalities? And is any of their personalities in you?
Definitely, definitely. I would say every character I write has a little bit of my personality. Even Vita the dog, I have to say, there's definitely part of me of her. So yeah, Jaime, he's very much an observer, and he doesn't make rash decisions. He likes to sit and watch rather than act, and I feel like I'm that way myself. But he's also an artist, which I have to say I am definitely not. I can make one handsome stick man. I mean, you're looking at the stick man, you're like, yeah, baby, let's go. But for the most part, I cannot draw. So it was really fun to have a character that can draw and that saw the world kind of like how I would like to see it myself, but I just don't, because I don't have that sense of color and imagery that comes into my head. When I write, I see the movie, so I see things playing out as if it were film, but I might not necessarily notice colors and details that Hyman notices. So that was really fun to have him um, noticing and paying attention and being passionate about those things. And then Angela, she's definitely kind of this motherly type. She wants to take care of everyone. I have taken care of a lot of kids in Santa Fe. That was actually my main job before I became an established writer, was doing a lot of babysitting and childcare. So um, I also have kind of that like protectiveness and that need to want to keep family close, or keep kids that you're in charge of close and be protective of them.
And she did surgery on that poor little dog, and she was afraid of dogs. I mean, she was definitely able to rise to the occasion. I admired her a lot.
I did
Um,
too. That was all her. I didn't tell her to do that. She got up on her own 2 feet and said, "This is what I'm going to do." And I'm like, "Hey, okay, you're in charge."
um, you start your book out with a volcano, and as we're speaking, the volcano in Guatemala is spewing a little bit. I think everybody's okay, but they ended their journey with the volcano. Could you talk about, is there any symbolism in that? Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, the symbolism has to do more with the fact that even though they were so far away from home by the end of the book, and I'm not hopefully not revealing too much, um, that there's still factors that can remind you of your home. So even if you are far from the people you love and the place that you call your home, can still be a connection. There can still be something that makes it feels familiar and safe and comforting. So it has that kind of symbolism. Um, and I mean, there are volcanoes ultimately all around the world, but they're also very different volcanoes. So the volcano that I had referred to borders Mexico and Guatemala, and the final volcano is a disclosed uh, place in New Mexico. But yes, I wanted just to create that sense of home and welcoming and feeling that, okay, all right, it looks different, it feels different. but there's a volcano, so it helps to kind of stabilize and ground.
These are definitely very personal stories that you're sharing with us. Whenever I know that you help teach kids to do their own writing and do workshops, what do you tell them to do? They have to write about their own experiences, or what? What do they do? Do they
I
just
mean,
make stuff up?
yeah, I am definitely more of the make stuff up. I don't like talking about my own experiences that much, and part of the reason is because it's like, I've lived, I've done that. That's not interesting. I want to do something new and different and exciting. And I mean, I say that to write is to experience life in somebody else's shoes. So yes, I want my characters to have a different life than I have already lived. So yes, I love for my students to make something up. It just, because to me, when you make something up, it's limitless. There's absolutely nothing that or no place that you can't go. So but what I do definitely encourage my students to say, okay, you're in this situation. Now, what would you do? So kind of putting themselves into the character's shoes. Like, for example, if I am doing a creative writing workshop regarding this book, I will say, okay, you need to leave your family, your country, your home right now, today. What will you take with you? And then they're thinking about, okay, yes, what would I take with me? What are the things that are important to me so that I can remain close to my family, so that I could survive, so I can this. Yeah, I mean, that's just a general example, of course. Other times I may give them a completely different task, but yes, imagination. And for any of you listening out there, if anyone ever tells you that you are a liar, you're not a liar. You're just a writer with a very active imagination. So keep that in mind.
What was your first most favorite story
Uh,
that
so
you wrote? That you wrote?
that I wrote.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was a preteen, I think I was about 12, I wrote a story about Martha, the last passenger pigeon. And I was inspired because I had read an article about passenger pigeons and how they were extinct. So, yes, I wrote a story on, you know, from the pigeon's point of view on what it felt like knowing that you were the last one in the world, and nothing you could do could possibly make your species continue because you were the last one. So I know that sounds really sad, but at the time, I was actually just more inspired in the sense of, okay, what would it feel like to be the last of your species? And so I approached it, for me at least, it just felt more of a curious exploration rather than a morbid, depressing story.
Hmm. Thank you. Let's see what else have we got here. So I know that you've talked to kids a lot about your books. What's a couple of questions that is most commonly asked and that you enjoy answering?
So a lot of times they want to know if it's real, if it's based on my own family's experience, and I say no. That I am the daughter of Cuban refugees, and I did grow up hearing what it was like for my family, their country, their home. Um, so I was able to take the sentiments of that and put it into my book, but the book itself is a fictional, is a work of fiction, but it is based on things that a lot of kids have experienced. And every once in a while, I'll have somebody come up to me and sometimes they can be like a bit hostile and scared because they're like, dude, how did you know this happened to me? And I'm like, I actually don't know this happened to you, but I know that it happened to so many people like you. And uh, you know, this is my way of trying to, you know, give you a book that you can relate to, but also provide a book for people who are not aware that this is happening to be able to understand what you yourself went through. And then, of course, you know, they kind of calm down and they're like, oh, okay. But, you know, you could tell that they were nervous and intimidated, that I had was like maybe watching them through a camera so that they actually knew, so that I knew what they had actually gone through. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's very important to say that it's fiction, but it's something that a lot of people are going through and still going through today. Not 4 or 5 years ago when the book came out, but today they're still going through this.
I have to tell you that for me, that there were parts of that book that was very, very intense, and my hands were sore from gripping the pages so hard. And I just have to ask you, whenever you write really intense scenes, do you have to go in through any kind of decompression and, or you try to figure out how to calm yourself down? Does it affect you, or am I the only one that gets internalized like that?
Well, there's definitely scenes that I write and I might even be crying and I'm like, oh, this is horrible.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, you also have to keep in mind that people can read a lot faster than you can write. So a scene may take me several days, maybe even several weeks to write. So there is a lot of time, you know, to go out with the dogs and get fresh air. So yes, I would say it's harder to read uh, about the intense scenes than it is to actually write it, because I can take breaks whenever I want to, or whenever I need to, or whenever I'm just not sure what's going to happen next.
And I think I understand it. Okay, one last question. I think we can open this up if you don't mind.
Sure.
Uh, what's your superpower?
Ooh. See, so coming back to teaching circus, I actually taught a clown class on Monday, and I asked my clown students, what was their superpower. And um, if I had a fictional superpower, it would definitely be flying, because I've always really, really wanted to fly. But my realistic superpower, I would say, is the ability to be able to wear multiple hats or different hats, whatever the case may be. So I am an author. I am also a circus um, performer. I'm also a goat midwife. So, you know, there is a lot about me that most people would not be aware of. So I would say that's my superpower, that I have a lot of diversity to me.
One thing I love about working with kids is if you ask them their superpower, bam, they'll tell you. They know
Oh,
what it
yeah.
is.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I also have to say that I really love the way circuses have evolved, and it's more like acrobatics. And when I get rich, I'm going to go see every circus all over the world. So,
Oh, that'd be fun. Can I join you?
yep, let's go.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. We'll start the caravan right now.
Yeah, there you go. So, let's see. Can we take some questions now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw Susan had a question from earlier on.
Yeah,
Do
I'm not
your
finding the chat part of this. So,
Don't worry about it, Walter. I got it. Susan, I
okay.
just promoted you and you can ask your question live.
Cool. Hey,
Hi, Susan. Thanks for joining us.
I read all 3 of your books and was completely enwrapped for each book. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you a teacher or a librarian?
I work at the Southside Library and Children's Services.
Fantastic.
I taught preschool for years before this. So yeah, I was just wondering about your characters. You touched on this a little bit, but your characters process it in terms of as you write the story, it sounds like they sort of become their own person in some ways. Can you talk more about that? Does that vary from book to book and character to character?
It definitely varies from character to character. So I always have a general idea of how my characters are going to behave when I start the book. But sometimes I will choose my characters to do things that they'll be like, you're not going to make me do that. No, I'm going to go over here. And I'm like, I created you. You have to do it my way. And they're like, you're not the boss of me. I'm going to do it my way. And it's like, fine, yes. And, you know, that's actually when you know you have a really good character that is three-dimensional and can think for themselves and make their own choices, make their own mistakes. So as an author, you kind of have to allow them to do so, just like you would if you were a parent with your own children. So yeah, I really like it when they start doing that, even though, you know, I pretend to be a little annoyed with them. But I think that's something that a lot of new writers will struggle with, is not making their characters fully three-dimensional. And so that is something that I highly recommend. Don't just tell me, you know, what they look like, but tell me how they would react in different situations. Tell me what they would do if they were faced with a tough choice, because those are the things that make them realistic and three-dimensional, and not just flat people on the page. Does that kind of answer your questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And that really comes through in your books, that
Thank you.
that trueness of character and spirit. That's why it's so gripping, I think. And the other question I had was, for each book, how did your experience vary with the writing of the 3 books?
So when I started writing The Only Road, it was at a time when a lot of unaccompanied minors were coming to the US. So I did a lot of research on that, and I interviewed people who had had a similar experience, and I was able to create my own story, you know, based around that. I will say with Santiago's Road Home, things were very different in the sense that we were in a different political administration, and the rules were changing constantly. So, for example, Santiago's Road Home, Santiago spends a good amount of time in a detention center. And the rules for that, yes, they just change constantly. So for example, when I started writing it, it was considered a law that children were required to have an education, like a couple hours of education every single day if they were in one of these facilities. By the time I finished writing it, an immigration lawyer friend of mine was saying, no, that doesn't even happen anymore. You know, education is a luxury. So that meant that I had to change a little bit of the story, because it is a big part that he meets a teacher and he learns how to read and write while in the detention center. So yeah, that was just challenging, because I just never knew what was going to happen next and what I would need to change.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
We have a question from the Becker family, and they would like to know, how many of the choices are yours versus the characters acting on their own? Did you have any big surprises?
So I would say that it's I would say most of the choices are mine, in the sense that I want them to, the big choices, because I want them to get to a certain part. So or I want them to go in a particular direction. So the choices that are more the characters acting on their own, I would say are smaller choices in the sense of what they are doing for that chapter, which may or may not affect, the big picture. And did I have any big surprises? Well, yes. So like one of the big surprises was Angela sewing up this dog that she was absolutely petrified. I was going to have one of the other kids take care of the dog. And Angela on the page, she's like, no, this is my job. I'm going to do it. I am the quote unquote, protector of this group, the most motherly. I'm the one who's going to do it. So yeah, she definitely took me by surprise. But other things that are, like I say, more big picture, those tend to be more my choices. And thank you, Becker family, for that question.
We have a
Okay,
question
I'll
from
do this.
Jose. And Jose, would you like to come on the screen and ask your question, or would you like us to just read it? See if he'll type in the chat. Jose would like to know, would you change anything about the book now that it's out there? And if so, what?
I wouldn't at this point. I have to say that I like how the book has turned out. What I would like to change is the ability to have more information about other characters. So there were things that I wanted to include in the books that got edited out for multiple reasons, usually because it didn't serve a purpose for the overall story, or the word count was already too high, so you had to delete some things. So yeah, the book itself, I like, but yes, given the option, if I could just include other details and other scenarios and ideas that I had thought out and wanted to share and explore with the audience, it would be fun to add that to the books for sure. Thank you, Jose.
Do we have any others? I have another one I'd like to ask if.
And I mean, if anyone wants to ask a question in Spanish,
Go for it.
eso está bien conmigo también.
Here's one. So I really like all the people that made this journey with your two kids, and it is driving me crazy wondering what happened to them all. What happened to them?
I'm sorry. So you chopped out a little bit. Could you repeat
Oh,
what you said?
yeah. So there was quite a few kids that joined in on this journey, and what happened to them all? We only
Right.
know about that.
Right. So I'm going to be very, very cheeky, and I'm not going to answer that question. However, there will be some information about a character in the Crossroads. And if you are really smart and really clever and have a very, very good sense of deciphering, you might possibly, potentially, maybe, perhaps be able to figure something out about another character in Santiago's Road Home, if it even exists. But that character is not mentioned by name, so you're going to have to just be really, really clever. And I could totally also be making that part up. So who knows? You'll just have to
And
read it
see,
and find out.
I read it backwards. Typical me. I'm a little dyslexic. I started with Santiago's journey first. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go back and read it to see what happened. What happened to one
And
of our
I
characters?
see a question in the Q&A from Michelle. Would you
Yes,
like to read the question in person,
I don't
Michelle, or
see
should I
it.
do it?
You go ahead if you don't mind. I don't see it.
Okay. So Michelle's question was, does your writing process involve creating a visual map or drawing of the plot and or characters? That's such a great question. So I would say that every book has been written differently. And even though I am a visual person, I am not an artistic person. So for me, it doesn't work to have, plot points and then, little drawings and arrows and things like that. What I generally do is I know where it starts and I know where it ends, and it's the middle part that is kind of the journey, if you will, because that's where I need to figure out how things are going to go. That said, The Only Road was very chronological. So I had an idea of where it was going to go kind of at each step of the way. Other books have been written more like, ooh, this is a fun scene, or this scene, oh, it's so heart-wrenching, I have to put this in. And, oh, what would happen when this happened? So that one was definitely more splotchy in terms of the creative process. And then I had to put it together. And the disadvantage of working in kind of that patchwork style is that you need to make sure it still works as an overall story with an overall arc. But Michelle, I would honestly say that there is no right or wrong creative process, and everyone has their own methods of doing things. I know some people who are very methodic and they will write a detailed outline of every single thing that's going to happen in their book before they've even started writing. That is, again, not a method that works for me, but if it works for you, go for it. I know other people who will write a first draft, delete it, and then they start from scratch and taking it slower. And if you go on that method, I just want to say, make sure you have a backup of that thing you deleted. I understand not wanting to have it as a reference, but keep it, in some hidden folder if you need to, just in case you ever do want to go back and you think, oh, what was that really brilliant thing that I said? Because, you will often come across really great writing and then you can't remember what you wrote. So if you go with the deleting method, make sure it's still backed up somewhere,
I saw that you studied writing in Bath, England, which is, gosh, that's like learning to go from Jane Austen to Josefina Golondrina's Ranch. It's like that's quite a big span there. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. So it was at a time that I have to admit I was feeling a little frustrated with living in the US in general. And I wanted to get a master's degree specifically in writing books for children and teen. So I did what most of us do in this day and age is, we go to Google and I typed in, MA, writing for children programs UK or something like that. And yeah, I came up with 2 schools. I applied to them both, got accepted into both of them, and I chose Bath. I have to admit, because it was prettiest. And part of me was saying, you're not going to the school just because it's prettier. You're going to the other school because it's cheaper. And it's like, no, I want to go to the pretty school. I went to the pretty school. What can I say? And I absolutely adore it. And I still have a very strong connection with Bath. I used to go every single year. I didn't make it last year for obvious reasons. But yes, I'm desperate to go back, and I have lots of friends there. So it's my second home. I don't know if other people have experienced going to a place and you're like, yes, this is it. This is home. Like, this is where I belong.
So unless there's, I think that's all the questions. I have to say that it's been a very big pleasure and an honor to work with you. When's the next book coming out?
Well, it's being written kind of as we speak. Well, not really, because I'm not physically writing it, but yes. So the next book is coming out summer 2022. That is kind of how the book industry goes, is that it does take quite a while for books to get written and then go through all the editorial process and the publishing and all of that.
Well, thank you so very much.
Of course.
I
Thank
think
you.
that I think we'll shut it down. And
Okay,
we'll look for you the
unless
next
there's
time.
any final questions. But thank you all so much for having me here. Thank you, Family Becker, as well. And those of you who asked questions, Michelle and Jose, thank you all. Susan as well.
Yeah, Susan. Well, have a great day.
All right, thank you guys so much for
And,
having me here.
We hope to see you out on the streets with your stilts soon.
Oh, totally.
I'll be looking for you.
One of my friends was here.